Hi, in the previous video, we worked on displaying our properties and a not found page. In this video, we're going to focus on the register, activate, login and logout functionality. So first things first, we shall not be using React in strict mode, so let's amend our index.js file. So go back to your client directory slc, index.js file, then just get rid of strict mode here, leave it as an empty fragment, save the file, our page should still reload and everything should still work. Nice. Then as a reminder, we are not going to be writing CSS for this tutorial. The CSS used in this particular video can still be found in the index.css file with the other CSS from the other parts of the project. All this is in the project repo. So let's take a step away from properties and build out our React Redux authentication workflow with ReduxToolkit. So first things first, in the features folder, we're going to create an auth service.js and an auth slice.js file. So go back to client SRC, then features here. Then we're going to create a new folder here. So this is going to be called auth. Then within the auth folder, we're going to create a new file. This is going to be called auth slice.js. And we're going to create another file. This is going to be called auth service.js. Then let's start with the service. So let's just close all this. Within the service, we are going to make our HTTP requests. First, you can say import Axios from Axios. Then we're going to create URLs for the register, login, and the activate URL. So we can say here const, then we can call this register underscore URL. This is going to go to /API/v1/ those users like that. Then the next URL is going to be for login URL. So const login underscore URL. This is going to go to /API/v1/auth/jwt/create. Then we're going to the activate URL. We can say const. This is going to be activate underscore URL. This is going to be go to /API/v1 auth, then users/evasion. Remember, these URLs already defined when we are building our backend API. They're the same URLs we're using now on the front end. Then next we're going to create a register service. So here we can just say, let's just have a comment. You can say register. Register user. We can say const register. This is going to be an asynchronous request, so you use the async keyword. Then this asynchronous request is going to take in some user data, and then you're going to have an arrow function. Then you're going to declare the config. So here, remember, the headers is supposed to be, we're transmitting JSON data, so you can say constant config. Here we're going to say the headers for our request are going to be JSON. So you can say the content type is going to be application/JSON like this. And then after declaring the config here, what you can say is now the response. You can say const response is going to be await, then axios.post to the register URL, and to this register URL we're going to take in some data, which is going to be the user data, and lastly pass in the config like that. Then you're going to return the response. So you can say return from the response we want the data, so return response.data like that. That's basically it for the register. Then we're going to do one for login. So login user. Here we're going to say const login is going to be async. Then we're also going to take in some user data like we did before. Then we're also going to pass in the configuration for the headers, which is const or content type application JSON. So let's just copy that from the register. And then we're going to have the response. You can say const response is going to be await access.post to the login URL, taking in the user data and the config. So here what we want happening is that when a user logs in, we want to set the an item called user to the local storage. You can say if response.data. Whoa, this is wrong. Wow. So if, like that, good. Response.data. If this exists, what you're going to do is going to say local storage. We're going to set an item, and the item is going to be called user. You can call this whatever you want. And we're going to stringify the JSON response. You can say JSON.stringify the response.data from our Axios request. Then if that's true, we can just return a response.data. Then next you're going to do one for logout. So you can just say const logout. So when we log out, what we basically want done is we want to remove this item from the local storage. So you can say logout is going to be an arrow function. And here you can just say local storage.remove item, and you're going to remove item, which is the user. Remember, in our auth workflow, once a user registers, they have to activate. You can say we're going to define one for activation. So you can say const activate is going to be async with the user data. Then we're going to pass in the config application JSON. You can just copy this from up here. And then you're going to make a response. So you can say const response is going to be await access.post to the activate URL. We're going to take in the user data and the config, which is just the headers application JSON. And then what are we going to do next? We're going to return the response. So we can say just at the bottom here, let me clear that. You can say return response with data. Good. I think that's it for, let me just confirm. Register, we are good. Make the post request. Login, yes. Then you set the item to local storage. Then log out, remove the item. Then you activate, you send the post request to the URL, the data. Nice. Then now you can say const auth service. We want to export our services. So const auth service is going to be an object with register, login, logout, and activate. Then you can just export the auth service as a default. So you can just say export default auth service. And that's basically it for our services file. So next we're going to create the auth slice. So go back to auth, then auth slice. So here we're going to, let me just look at the property slice. Let's just do the import for ReduxToolkit. You can just say you're going to import create async tank, then the create slice from ReduxToolkit, and then we're going to import the, let me just copy this for property service. Actually, that's not copy. Let's go back here and say, here we're going to import the auth service from /auth service. Good. So when we're declaring our state, the first things first, we want to get our user from local storage. So you can say const user going to be JSON. Now use .pass, use the pass method. And we're going to say local storage.get item. The item we want to get is the user. Remember, this is the user that we had set here. Where was it? User here. So we're getting it first. And then we want to now declare our initial state. We can say const initial state. So the initial state here, we want to have user piece of state. Then let me see. In the property slice, we had properties is error, loading, message. So we're going to maintain these three: is error, is loading, is message, and is success. Let's just copy that to our slice as a piece of state. And then you're going to add another piece of state. This time is for the user. So you can say user is going to be the user from the local storage. If it exists, give us the user. If not, set the user piece of state to null, like that. Good. So I hope we understand the ternary operator here. Instead of using multiple if-else statements, I'm just using the if-else, but using ternary operators, using the question mark, then the full colon. If the user exists, give me the user, and this is the user from the local storage. If the user doesn't exist, the else part of it, we just set the user piece of state to null. Then now we're going to create the async tank function for registering a user. As a reminder, remember the create async tank function accepts a Redux action type as a string and a callback. So you can say export const register So here you're going to say create async thunk. Then it's going to first take the action type as a string. So the action type here, you can set it to whatever you want. For my case, and because we're in the auth features folder, so I can say auth. Then the action type I want to execute is register. So make sure this makes sense according to what you're building. Then we're going to pass in the async function. So the async function takes in the user and the thunk API. So remember here, user, remember in our services here, it said whenever we're registering a user, we take in some user data. That's what this user is referring to. So this user here can also be called user data if you want. User data. Yeah. So remember, this user is not referring to the user piece of state, it's referring to the payload from the service here. So with the thunk API done, so now we can have our try catch statement. So here you can just say try catch block here. Then we're going to say in the try, we're going to say here, just basically going to return await from the auth service. And we're going to look at the register function and you're going to pass in the user. Then for the catch, we're going to use the same statements used when you are doing the property slice. So here, just going to say copy all this, then bring it to the slice. So if you don't understand this create async thunk function, watch the previous video where I had explained it when you're doing the property slice. So with that create async thunk function done, let me just save it so that it can get reformatted. Or we can do one for login. So actually, let me see. Okay, let's just type it out. The next one will copy. You can say just export const login is going to be create async thunk. Here the action string type is going to be auth / login, like that. Then say async function taking in the thunk API. Then you're going to have a try catch block. Then for the catch, we're just going to copy from the previous one, copy the message and the reject with the value. We just paste that there. Then for the try, here we're just going to return await, then the auth service dot login and takes in the user. So remember, as I said before, let's just go back to the service. When you are logging in again, also takes in some user data. That user data is passed on to the request. So that is what we are that's what we are referencing to here. When you say for the auth service login, just take in the user. That's it. You can change that, remember, to user data or whatever makes sense to you. Then for the logging out of the user is going to be simple. So here we're just going to say export const logout. We're going to call create async thunk. The action string type is going to be auth / logout. Then you're going to use async. But remember, if you go back to the service here, when we are logging out, we're not taking in any user data. So when we come here to the async function, you can just leave it blank like that. Then taking the arrow function here, we're just going to say await the auth service dot logout. Simple as that. Let me see. Const logout, create async thunk. Actually, let me check something here. Since here we're basically just removing the item from local storage, I don't necessarily have to have this await. I can just call auth service dot logout. Anyway, we'll see when we test it out in the UI if we are right or wrong. Let's proceed. So to activate a new user, let me check. Takes in some user data. Good. We can see here export const activate is going to be create async thunk. Our action stream type is going to be called auth / activate. For our async function, you're going to take in the user and the thunk API. And then you're going to have our usual try catch. Then for the error, as usual, we just copy this, come to the bottom, paste that in. Then for the try, we're just going to return await auth service. From the auth service dot activate, and we pass in the user. Save that. So with these three create async thunk functions done, let's now create our actual slice. So you can say export const auth slice, like that. You're going to use the create slice function. So create slice, was it imported? Nope. Here it's going to be create slice. So when you're creating our slice, one, we have to give it a name. So name for this, since you're doing authentication, this is going to be auth. And then we give it our initial state. And then we pass in reducers. So remember, when you're creating slices, we have reducers. And then we also have extra reducers. So remember, reducers are used to handle like synchronous reducer functions. So for our synchronous reducer function here, you're just going to pass in the reset, where we reset our state. We can just say state here. This can be done synchronously. We can say state that is loading. This can be false. Then state dot is error. Whenever we're resetting our state, that is also false. Then state dot success is success. Sorry, this can also be false. Then then state dot message. This can be an empty string. And then whenever we are resetting, let me see. We can also set the user back to null whenever we're doing a synchronous reset. So you can say state.user is null, like that. So for our asynchronous reducers, we have to use the extra reducers. So we can say here extra reducers. And the extra reducer takes in a builder. Then here we can say now, remember, whenever you use create async thunk, this automatically passes us 3 parameters, that is pending, fulfilled, and rejected. That's what we want to handle in our extra reducers. So we can say, and we do that by using this builder function, and then we add cases. So we can say builder dot, so say builder, then dot, we're going to add a case. So the case is for when register. So we want to start with register. So we want to start with register, then login, then activate. So in register is pending, pass in the state. Here we can say state.isLoading is going to be true, like that. So this case is automatically passed when you use create async thunk for asynchronous functions. So we have pending, fulfilled, and rejected. So we're going to add another case. So add case here. So this case is going to be for when register dot is fulfilled, like that. This time we're going to pass in state as we did before, but you're also going to pass in an action because we want something from the payload. Oh, and then remember, this register login blah 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 is what you're defined here. Now slice this ones, this create async thunk functions, that's what we are referring to at the bottom. So for register here, when the register is fulfilled, we want the state that is loading to be false. Then we want state that is success. This should now be true. And then the state dot user should now be the action dot payload, the payload from the request. Then you're going to add another case. You can say here add case for register dot rejected. When our request is rejected, we pass in the state and the action. Then you can say here state dot is loading is going to be false. Then state dot is error is going to be true. And then state dot message, whenever there's an error, I want to pass the error to the message from the backend. You can say message, this time is going to be action dot payload. And then the state dot user is just going to be null. Good. Then we're going to add another case for login. So I can just copy this register case here. So let me just copy this register cases, then paste it below. So we have register pending, fulfilled, rejected. So the next one is going to be loading. So when, how comes this? Sorry, login. Wow, loading. So login pending. So state.isLoading is going to be true. Then login fulfilled. When the login is fulfilled, isLoading is going to be false. Success is going to be true. Then the user is going to be from action to payload. Then login rejected. Pass in state and the action. Then state.isLoading is going to be false. State.isError is true. Then state.message is going to be the action.payload. Then the user is going to be null. Good. Then do the next. We're just copying these cases now. Want to do for logout. So here, for logout, logger doesn't have the other pending states because we're not making any. Remember here, let me just show you. Remember when you're doing the logout here, we're not, if you go back to our services, we're not making any asynchronous request. We're just removing the item from the local storage. So here we can just say for logout, where you register, then log in. So for logout, if logout is fulfilled, from the piece of state, we just want to say that when you log out, just remove the item from the local storage. So on that sets states.user back to null. Then next we're going to do now for activate. So we can say, let me copy one pending. I log in here. Then after logout, let's put one here. Then this is going to be activate. When the activation is pending, state.isLoading is true. Then when activate is fulfilled, we want state.isLoading is going to be false. Then state.isSuccess is going to be true. We're not going to be taking any user from the payload. Then from activate here, when it's rejected, we're going to pass in state and action. Then we're going to say state.isLoading is false. IsError is true. We're going to get the error message from the payload. If it exists, then the user is going to be null. And I think that's it actually. So last, you need to export these functions. So you can just say export const first reset is going to be auth_slice.actions. Then you're going to export default auth_slice.reducer like that. Then you basically save this. Then remember, we need to add our auth reducer to the store. So if you go back to app on src app, then store.js, we can now see here our auth piece of state is going to map to the auth reducer. Then we need to import this. So we can just say import auth reducer from /features, then auth, then auth slice. Good. And we save that. So with our store definition done, back in the components folder, let's amend our header.jx file to add our user state so that our login and logout links change depending on our user state. So go back to components, then you're going to go to header.jsx. We just close all this. So in the header.jsx files, we're going to bring in some imports. So first, we're going to bring in some icons. So you can say import from React icons /font awesome. We want to bring in, let me see. We want to bring in FA sign in alt. Let me React icons. FA sign in alt. Yeah, okay, that's correct. Sign in alt. Then you want to bring in FA sign out alt. And then you're going to bring in from React Redux. From React Redux, you're going to bring in use dispatch, the use dispatch hook, and the use selector hook. Then from React Router DOM, we're going to bring in the use navigate hook. So from React Router DOM, version 6 has this hook now called use navigate. Use navigate. And if you want to see what it does, just hover over it and then see returns an imperative method for changing the location, but may also be used by other elements to change location. That. Then I use dispatch as usual, a hook to access the Redux dispatch function when we're dispatching our actions, then selector for selecting our piece of state. Then from features, we're going to bring in now logout and reset. So you can say from ReduxToolkit features, auth, from our auth slice, we're going to bring in logout and reset. Then now from the header here at the component level here, we're going to say now const navigate. We're going to create an instance of the use navigate hook. You can just say use navigate like that. Then the same, we're going to do the same for dispatch. So you can say const dispatch is going to be use dispatch. Now we want to select our user. Whoa. We want to select our user from our state. So how do you do that? Use the use selector hook. So you can just say const destructure and user. We want to do the use selector. Then from the state, we want to bring in, we want to get the user from state.auth like that. So how do you get this state.auth? Remember, if you go back to features here, then in the auth slice, we're declaring our initial state here. We have the user. Then our root reducer is declared in the store. So if you come to the store, we have the auth. So we said auth maps out to our auth reducer. So if you want to get anything from the reducer stay from this slice, you can now say state.auth.user or .any other piece of state. So that's what we're basically doing here. Now we're going to declare a logout handler. So when a user logs out, remember we want to remove the user item from local storage. So you can just say const logout handler here is going to be an arrow function. And here we're going to dispatch. So we're just going to dispatch logout, which internally removes a user from the local storage. And then when you log out, you also want to set the user to, the state back to default. So you can also dispatch reset. And remember, reset is our synchronous reducer. So if you go back to zit slices here, you see for our synchronous reducers here, reset basically just sets our state back to default. Then once you also click on the logout button, we want to navigate the user back to the home page. So here is where you're going to use the use navigate hook. You can say navigate to home like that. So now let's add our links. So let's go back. Let's go down. Where was it? Let me see. After real estate here, then on the toggle bar, after home, then properties here in this drop down. So here for this drop down, it's going to be dependent on the user piece of state. So you can just say if the user exists in the piece of state, we're going to do something. So here we're basically going to say, the user exists, then you're going to have the navbar with the drop down. The title here, this is going to be our first name. So user.firstname exists. Then the ID here, ID, you can just change this to username like that. Then we're not going to have navbar. So before this drop down item, we're going to create a link container. You can say link container. So to, let's say profile, which doesn't exist. We're going to add a drop down item. So just copy this drop down item, put it there. Then here we're going to change this href. We're not going to have a href because we're using the link container to property here. It's going to be to profile. Then after the link container, we're going to have a drop down item here. Remove this on href. This is going to be on click. If you click this, we're going to call the logout handler. So here we're going to move this another action. We're going to put in the font awesome font. So it's going to be FA sign out alt. Then with the text of logout like that. Remember, this is a component, self-closing. Then after the navbar drop-down item, we're going to have the navbar drop-down. Then here, we're going to put now the bracket. Then we're going to have the else block. So remember, we're still here. So if the user exists, we want to do all this here up to this part. Then for the else, that's what we want to define down here. So here, we're basically going to have a link to the login page and say link container to login. Then you're going to have a nav link. So you can say nav.link like that. Then you're going to pass in the font awesome icon. This is go FA sign in alt. like that. We're going to pass in login. So you have the nav link, then link container here. Then we close that. Now the errors are gone. You can save to format. This is how it should look like. If the user exists, show the profile and the logout links. Else, if the user doesn't exist from the piece of state, we're going to show the login route. So with all this done, let's just save this, make sure everything is okay. So you can go back to our application and test and see what's happening. So real estate, since from our state, we don't have, let me just refresh here. Good, now we have the login route. If you click on login, we're redirected to a not found page because we haven't declared the page yet. Good, so I think we're in a good place. So let's proceed to the next stage where we're going to define this login page. So remember previously when you navigated to the login route, we were presented with the 404 not found page because we haven't defined our login page. So let's define it. So go back to SRC. Then here on the pages folder here, we're going to create a new login page. So create a new file. It's going to be called loginpage.jsx. Then as usual, we're going to have some inputs. So you can say first, we're going to import React. We're going to say use state. We're going to use the state hook and the use effect hook. All this is from React. Then we're going to import some items from some components from React Bootstrap. And the items is going to be button, colon, then container. We're going to import the form and the row from React Bootstrap. Then from React icons, we're going to import, so React icons /FA. We're going to import FA sign in alt. We had used this before. Sign in alt. Let me see. Call it FA sign in alt. Make sure it's correct. And then from React Redux, we're importing our usual suspects. Whoa. Our usual suspects of use dispatch and use selector. Then from React Router DOM, let's bring in link, use location. This is a new hook we haven't used so far. And then use navigate we had used previously. So use navigate. So use location, if you just hover it, returns the current location object, which represents the current URL in web browsers. That's what it's all about. Then from React Toastify, so React Toastify, here we want to bring in the toast. And then from our components, let me see, from components, spinner, we want to bring in our spinner component. Then we're going to bring in the title. So from /components /title. You're just going to bring in title like that. And then you're going to bring in from our features, then auth, then the auth slice. Here we're basically going to bring in login and reset. So login and reset like that from auth slice. And then now we're going to declare our page. So we can say const login page. It's going to be an arrow function. So here first we're going to, when you're logging in, you want to pass in the email and the password. So you have to get this from our state. So you can say const, we're going to have a state of email and the password. So you can say email and the function to manipulate the state. We're going to call it state email. Sorry, set email is going to be use state. And the initial state is going to be an empty string. So the same for password. So the piece of state is going to be called password. The function to manipulate this state is going to be called set password. And the current state is going to be an empty string like that. Then you're going to initialize dispatch. So you can say const dispatch is going to be use dispatch. Then navigate is going to be use navigate. And then location, our new hook, const location. This is going to be use location. So we can say from our piece of state you want to bring in, from our auth slice here, we want to bring in all these pieces of state. So in our login page, you can say const. We're going to destructure user is loading, is error is success. and then the message. All this we're going to use selector hook. You can say use selector hook, and we're going to select from the piece of state. You can say state, and the state we want to get from is state.auth, like that. And then actually I've just realized something. We don't, for our use case here, we're not going to use location, because let me see, are we going to be routing programmatically to a different URL? Not really. So I don't think we're going to use this. Just get rid of it. This is use navigate. The problem here. Let's see. Yeah, use navigate. Navigate. Then use dispatch. Yeah, sorry. So we're not going to use location for this. So now we're going to declare the use effect. Remember, the use effect hook is run whenever a component mounts or updates. So use effect here takes in, the syntax is an arrow function like that. And then you're going to have a list of dependencies. So whenever a component mounts, one, we want to check if there's any error. So you can say if is error is true. So we want to say when our component first mounts, if there's any error, we want to pass in the error message to a toast. So you can say toast.error, error, pass in the message. Then within the same use effect, so you can say if is success, meaning we are successfully logged in, or the user piece of state already exists in our local storage. We don't want the person to still be able to navigate to the login page. So navigate this person to the home page. Then within the use effect, we're also going to dispatch reset. Dispatch reset, like that. Then the list of dependencies here is now going to is error, is error. Then is success. We're going to pass in the message. Then what else? User, yes. The user. Then navigate, yes, we're using it within the use effect. So the dependencies are basically the functions we're using within the use effect hook. So you see we're having is error there, we have is success. We are passing in the message to the toast, so that's a dependency. The user piece of state there, then the navigate hook and dispatch. Then next we're going to create a submit handler. You can say const submit handler. This is going to take in a parameter e, then an arrow function. So here we're basically going to say whenever you click on the submit button, first we prevent the default behavior. So say e.prevent default. And then we did validation on the backend, but it's also good to also do the validation on the front end. So for example, you can say if there is no email, we can say you can run a toast with the error and say an email must be provided. So you can either do this like this, or you can pass this error straight from the backend to the front end if you wish. So let's just leave it as that. Then if there is no password, we can say toast.error. The password must be provided. Then remember we have to pass in some user data. You can say const user data here. The data I want to pass in is just the email and the password. This is what is required to make the request. So with this data, we can now call the dispatch hook. So you can say dispatch. We're going to pass in login with the user data. So why am I having an error? Let me see. Actually, I made a mistake. Let me see. Does this curly brace? Aha, that's the problem. So my component, all this should be within the component. Good, because it was struggling to get email password. But remember, we had destructured that from the state. So I just messed up with this curly brace. I just take it to the bottom so I don't mess again. So what are we going to do next? Now we're going to have a return statement here for this component. So one, we want to return an empty fragment. Within this fragment, we want to pass in the title component. The title here is just going to be taking the title prop. The prop there is going to be called login. Then you're going to have a container. So for the container, we're going to take in a row. Then what else? Let me see. Now we're going to have a column. So for the column here, it's going to have a class name. So class name here is going to be margin top, mgtop, margin top and text center. Then you're going to have a section. So section is going to have a heading 1. So for this heading 1, you're going to put in a font awesome icon. So this is going to be FA sign in alt. The text is going to be called login. Then beneath the H1, you're going to have a horizontal rule. This is just for styling. The class name here is going to be HR text. This is defined in the CSS. Get it from the repo. And then after the row, now here we want to get something. We want to say whenever is loading is true, we want to pass in a spinner at this particular point in our component. So you can say if is loading is true, just pass in the spinner. That to use the multiple and. If you don't know this, so let me just show you from the browser. So if you go to the browser to the console, if you pass in true and the JavaScript and true, the result is still true. If it's true and false, the result will be false. If it's false and false, the result will still be false, like that. So if is loading is true, pass in the spinner. Then you're going to declare a row. So the row here is going to have a class name. The class name here is going to be margin top, mt3. Then you're going to have another column. This column is going to have a class name. So the class name for this is going to be justify content center. Then we want to declare our form. So for the form, we're going to say on submit. Whenever you submit this form, you're just going to call the submit handler. What did they call it? Submit. Just confirm. Yeah, submit handler. Good. Then you're going to have a form group. So form.group. Remember, these are React Bootstrap components. So from the React form group here, we're going to have, this is going to be for the email. So you can pass in a control ID. Going to be email. All this, remember, is in the documentation for React Bootstrap. Then you're going to have a form label. So form.label. So the label here, we want the label to be email address. And then we're now going to have the form control. So for the form control, the type is going to be email. Type is going to be email. Then the placeholder is going to be enter email. Then the value here is going to be from the state is going to be email. And then on change, whenever this changes, we just want to pass in, let's say E. Then an arrow function, we want to now use the function that manipulates the email piece of state, which is set email. We want to set email to e.target.value, like that. So after our form control, so form control is a self-closing tag. So just get rid of that and close it at that point. It's form.control. Then you're going to have another form group again for the password. So just copy this first form group, paste it in here. So this is going to be for password. Then the label is going to be password. And then let me see. Here for the form control, the type is going to be password. Then the placeholder is going to be enter password. Then the value is going to be password. Then on change, we're going to set password to e.target.value. And then the form group. Actually, what was I saying? The form control is a self-closing tag, but the form group is not. So we need to add another form group here. Close this form group. No wonder there was that error. Yeah, good. So you remember we close this form group. Then you have another form group here for the password. And then after the form group, below the form group, but just before the form, we're going to declare the button. So the button here is going to be of the type submit. type is submit. Then the variant, the bootstrap variant, want to be primary. Going to be primary. Then the class name is going to be margin top 3, and the value of the text there is going to be sign in, like that. Then let's just save this so that everything is well formatted. So we have our form group, okay, with the email address, then the password, then the button. Then once this row ends here, we're going to have another row. To create another row here. So the row here is going to have our class name. So the class name here is going to be padding on the y-axis 3, and then you're going to have a column, sorry, I keep on saying column. So here you can say, are you a new customer? And then we're going to pass in a link to register. So link to slash register here. We're going to have a text saying register here, like that, with ellipses. Then link is not defined. So link, where are you? React Bootstrap, bring in link. Wow, not from React Bootstrap. Link is from React Router DOM. From React Router DOM here, we're going to bring in link, then save it. Let's go down to the bottom. So after register, we end the container, and then now we have to export our component. So export default login page, then save that. Then now let's add a route to the login page in our main app.jsx file. If you go to, where are you? App.jsx. So we're going to have a route. So remember, this catch all route for the not found page has to be at the very bottom. So all routes have to come above it for it to work. So we're going to declare another route here. Oh, another route there. It's self-closing. So this route is going to have a path. So let's see. The path is going to be login /login, like that. And then the element is not going to be homepage, but this time it's going to be login page. Good. So I've automatically imported it. If you can't automatically import, just bring in the import manually. Import login page from pages, login page, like that. Now, if you go back to application, let me see. React doesn't recognize control ID prop. So I messed up. Let me see. Login page here. The login page, let me see. Where did I mess that up? Okay. This is supposed to be control with a single L. The prop is control with a single L. Save that. Go back. Let me just reload. Good. We have no errors. So if you click on the login page, we're now redirected to the login. But if you click on the login link, we're now redirected to the login page. So let's see. Do I have any users? Let me see. I want to try the logging in. Users. Yes. I think I have the admin user. Good, I have the admin user, so I can log in. The email address is that, and that is the password. So let me first bring up the Redux DevTools. So if I click on, before you do that, if you click on this link here, new customer register here, where we are redirected to the register route. But since you don't have a register page, we have the 404 not found page. So go back to login. Login in the user that you have in your database. I have one. If I click on login, as you can see, I'm redirected to the login page. Sorry, to the home page, because it's a successful request. And if you use your Redux DevTools, you can see there was auth login pending. Then the auth login fulfilled. When it was fulfilled, there was a payload with the access and the refresh token. And then reset was called. Good. So we are good to go. Okay, if you've realized there is a slight bug. Whenever we log in, we expect, since if you look at auth login fulfilled, we're having the access and the refresh token, meaning the user piece of state exists. So you're supposed to have the logout routes. So I think I messed up. If you go back to the auth slice, here, let me see. Let me look at this slice here. when you're passing reset, we're not going to set the user to null because you're not logged out. So that was a mistake on my end. Whenever you're resetting with this synchronous reducer here, just going to set the loading, error, and message. So if you go back, good, the page has refreshed automatically. As you can see now, we have properties and then we have a drop-down link here to profile. If profile doesn't exist, if you click on logout, we're redirected back to the home page. Our logout is fulfilled, and if you go to our application, local storage, there's no user item. So let's test this thing out again. So go to login. So first, remember, make sure you get from reset, remove the user piece of set that we added there. So let's log in the user. Click on sign in. We're redirected to the home page. If you go to your console, if you inspect your browser, then you go to application, then look at local storage. You can see our user item is set to the local storage as we had set it before. And our navbar automatically changes because on logging in, whenever what we're getting as a response from the backend is just the access and the refresh token. So our first name is not showing up here, the navbar, but we get this dropdown. This dropdown shows profile and logout. If you click on profile, the page is not found. So I think let's change something here. On the header.jsx file here, so whenever, where are you? If the user piece of state exists, instead of returning the username, because this at times might not exist, so you can say user.firstname. If that doesn't exist, if that exists, just say user.firstname. Else, we can just pass in a string called, and just say welcome like that, and save. If the user first name exists, pass that in as a title for the dropdown, or just pass in welcome. Good. So you can see the welcome. You click on welcome, this profile and logout. So let's test logging out. So on logout, we expect this item to be removed from the local storage. So you click on logout. Good. Item is removed from local storage. Then we are redirected to the home page. If you go to Redux, you can see there's logout pending, then logout fulfilled. And when logout was fulfilled, that's the response. Good. So I think, and the beauty about using ReduxToolkit, you can see all the actions being fired and you can monitor the state as we progress through our application. So I think we are fine for this section. So let's commit our code. So go back to our Git client here and say feature, add login and logout functionality, and then make the commit. So next, let's focus on the registration and the user activation pages. So let's first build the registration page. Go back to pages, create a new file. Okay, pages, new file. We're going to call this register page.jsx. Then you're going to create a functional component and export it, register page. Then from React, we're going to bring in, let me see, a use effect. Whoa. Going to bring in use effect and use state. Then from React Bootstrap, we're going to bring in the button, column, container, the row, and the form. And then let me see, from React icons, /font awesome, we're going to bring in FA, let me see, I want a user, let me see, user, let me see, FA user, okay, good, FA user, so let me see, FA user, like that, from React icons. Then from, as usual, from React Redux, whoa, we're going to bring in use dispatch and use selector. Then from React Router DOM, we're going to bring in link and navigate, use navigate. And then from the rest, let me see, let me look at login page, because we can just copy some of these things. I need the toast, I need the spin, I need the title. I also need this slice, so just copy this toast, spinner, title, and the login. So bring all that in here. And then now here we don't need login, we need register, and then reset from our auth slice. Then from the register page here, now we're going to have the state. So go back to login page here. We're still going to use email and password. So let me copy that in, bring it in here. And then we can say, what else do we need? We need username. You can just copy email, and the state is going to be username, then set username. Then we also need first name. So you can just copy this. This is going to be first name. Then function to manipulate that state is going to be called set first name, like that. Then you also need last name. Then this is going to be set last name. Then you email, password. Then we need a password confirm field, and we called ours re-password. So re_password. This is going to be, say here it's going to be set re-password. Then as usual, we're going to pass in, create an instance of dispatch and navigate. Go back to the login page. Let's just copy this here. Good. And then we want to select some pieces of state from the auth piece of state. So go back to login page. You're going to do the same thing here. Just copy that, paste it in here. So you're getting user, is loading, is error, is success, and message from state.auth. That's okay. Then we're going to have our use effect. So you can just copy use effect from login page here. We're going to make just a slight change, hopefully. So use effect. So for use effect, yes, whenever there's an error, when a component first mounts, we need to pass in that error message. Then we're going to redirect when logged in. So if it's success or user exists, we're going to navigate you to the home page, and then we're going to pass in a toast message. So toast.success, and say here we're going to just say, remember in our registration workflow, once a user registers, we send an activation email for them to click on it before they are activated. There you can say redirect to homepage and say an activation email has been sent to your email address. Please check your email. Good. And then we're going to dispatch reset. Then the dependencies is error, is success, message, user, navigate, and dispatch. Then you're going to have a submit handler. Let me see. In the login page, do you have a submit handler? Yes. Let's just copy the same thing, then make a few changes. Typing is hard, so we're just going to copy some few stuff. So submit handler, prevent default. So here we're going to say if the password does not equal the re_password. So remember, I'm using ligatures, so that this is just like not equals to, like that. So if the password does not equal to the re_password, so you can pass a toast error message and say here, let's say passwords do not match. You can as well get this error message from the action payload from the backend if you don't want to type this message again. How do you do that? You just go to, let me see, go to auth slice here. Then in the register rejected, you can just now pass in this payload. Here you can just say message if you want, like that, or declare another message like passwords do not match. That's still okay. So if the password does not equal to the confirm password field, pass that error message as a toast. Else, remember, when you register a user, we need to pass in some user data. You can say const user data is going to be, so this time we need username, first name, last name, last name. We need the email, the password, and the password, and the _password fields. Then now we can dispatch. So let's just get rid of that. Then move this dispatch to the else block here. So here we're going to dispatch register and take in the user data. So something is wrong here. So user data, username, first name, last name is not defined. Okay, the error is because, let me see, first name, last name is not defined. Okay, I know what I did wrong. So this is supposed to be first underscore name, then last underscore name, that, and we should be good. Perfect. Now we're on the right track. So after dispatching register with the user data, now let's declare our component. So have a fragment there. Then we're going to take in a title. So let's copy from the login page because typing is hard. So what you're going to do is first copy this first block title, this container and row. Then come back to register page. Just copy this there. Ignore the error. It's because the container is not closed. So here the title is going to be register. Then the styling remains the same. And this icon is now going to be FA user. And this is going to go to register. Then horizontal rule with HR text. That's okay. With the row. And then after the row here, we're also going to go back to the login page. We're going to copy this is loading and spinner. Bring it in. Then let me just close this container to avoid the error message. Good. So after this, we're going to create another row. So you can see row here with a class name. The class name is going to be margin top 3, empty-3, empty-3 like that. Then column is going to be justify content center. We're going to have a column here with a class name. Oh, the class name is going to be justify content center. And then we're going to have a form. So the form here is going to have an onSubmit method. So on submit, we're just going to call the submit handler. And then here is where we can do some copying again. So go back to login page. First, let's save this. Then we can go to the login page. So we can copy the first form group. Yeah. Then just go back to the register page. Copy in the form group. So this form group is going to have a control ID. This is for the username. You can say username here. Then the label is going to be username. Then the for the form control, the type is just going to be name. Whoa. Type is going to be name. The placeholder is enter username. The value is going to be username. Then on change, we're going to set username to e.target.value. That's the one for the name. Then we're going to have another one for the first name. So we're basically going to copy this form group again, paste it in, and this time we change this to first underscore name, the control ID. Label is going to be first name. Then the type is going to be name. Placeholder is going to be enter first name. Then the value is going to be first underscore name. Then on change, this is going to be set first name e.target.value. Then after this form group, we're going to have another one for last name. So basically just copy first name, copy it down. This becomes first name. This becomes last name. Then enter last name. Type is just still going to be name. Then the value is going to be last name. And then the function here is going to be set last name the targeted value. Then that marks the end of that form group. Then the next form group is going to be for email. You can just go back to login page. You just copy the email one. It's going to be the same. Paste it in. Email address, type is email. Placeholder is enter email. Then email, set email. That's correct. Then the next one is going to be for password. Go back to the login page again. We're going to copy password, the form group. Copy it in. Bring it here, paste it. So the form group is going to be password. Type is password, enter password, value is password. Good. Then we're going to create another one for now, the re-password. That is for the confirm password field. You can just copy the password field, paste it down again. Then change this to re-password. Then the label can be confirm password. Then the type is password. Placeholder can be enter. Let's say enter confirm password. Then the value is going to be re_password. On change, we're going to set re_password to the value. And then after this form group here, we're going to have a button. So let me see. Bring in the button. Oh, button component, it's not imported. So let's import React Bootstrap button. Okay. Let me just go back and import it manually from React Bootstrap. Bring in button. Then from React Router DOM, also bring in link. Then let's go back to the bottom and you can say button. So type is going to be submit. Type is going to be submit, and then the variant is going to be primary, and then the class name is going to be MT3. Then the value is going to be sign up. That marks the end of the button. Then after this row, we're going to create another row. So it's going to look more or less like the one from the login page. So let's just come this row before the container. So copy that, come back, paste it. So this row is going to be saying now, in the column here, we're going to say have an account already. If you have an account already, you can click on this link. This link is going to go to the login page, and the text is just going to be login here. You can say login. That. Then that basically marks the end of the register page. So what you can go and check, you can go check in our application. So here in the login page, new customer, click on register here. Whoa, aha, not found because we haven't added it to the app.jsx file. So even before we do that, let's do plus the activation page. Then let's add both of them to the app.jsx file. So in the pages directory here, create a new file. We're going to call this page activate.jsx. We're going to create our function component, our arrow component. Then we're going to import the usual suspects. Go to register page. We're going to import this first too. Then from React icons, then as usual from React Redux, React Router DOM, then the toast, spinner, title. Let's just copy all this and we'll make the changes appropriately. So just paste it in the activate page. We're going to bring in React use effect. Here we're not going to have any state. Then we're going to put button, column, container, and the row. Then for the icons, I want the check. Let me see. In React icons, FA check. Yeah, I want this check circle. Good. So here I want to bring in FA check circle. Then use dispatch as usual and use selector. Then we're going to use navigate from React Router DOM, and we're going to use a new hook. It's called use params. So if you hover over it, it says, let me see. Don't get any documentation. I'll show you what use params does. So toast, then spinner, then the title. Then from the auth slice, this time we want to bring in activate and reset. Then for the activation page, so for the use parameters, remember when our user is supposed to activate, go back to the backend, Django Real Estate here. Or whenever we're activating a new user, the JSON response, we need to take in the user ID and the token from the URL. So those are parameters that are going to be passed. So we're going to use the use params to get in the user ID and the token. So you can say const destructure from use params, UID and the token. Destructure this from use params, like that. Those are parameters are going to pass to the activate page. Then you can say create an instance of use navigate. So you can say const navigate is going to be the use navigate hook. Let me see. What did I import? Not use navigatem, it's use navigate. Good. Then you're going to say const dispatch is going to be use dispatch. Whoa. dispatch like that. And then as usual, you're going to select the usual suspects from the state authentication, but from the state. So we're going to destructure our usual suspects, bring them to the activation page. So the usual suspects, this time you don't need user, just going to be is loading, is error, is success, and the message from the auth piece of state. Then you're going to have our use effect. Let's copy down from login. So this use effect, we're going to make some few changes. Go back to activate. So use effect. So here, whenever there's an error, pass in the toast message. Then if is success, this time there's no user piece of state here. If it's a successful activation, we're going to navigate the user back to the home page, and you're going to dispatch reset. And the dependencies, this time we have no user. It's just going to be is error, is success, message, navigate, and dispatch. Then we're going to have a submit handler. So you can say const submit handler. This is going to be an arrow function. Then you're going to take in some user data. So the data here, remember we're passing in the user ID and the token from the parameters. So we're going to dispatch, activate, and we're going to pass in the user data. Then if this is successful, let's pass in a toast success message. So you can say your toast.success and say your account has been activated. You can log in now. Good. Then now let's define our component here. So as usual, pass in a fragment in our return statement. Then we can pass in a title. Let me see. Go to login page. Let's just copy. Let's copy this first header, the title and the container. And activate. Paste in title container. Then to avoid errors, close the container. Then here we're going to say title is going to be activate user. Activate user. Then pass in a container. The row, the column is going to be mgtop, the correct one. Then the icon is going to be FA. We said check circle. And this is going to state activate your account. Then the horizontal row, the section, that's okay. Then as usual, after this row, we're going to pass in is loading. So if is loading is true, we're just going to pass in the spinner. We're going to show the spinner. Good. And then you're going to have another row. So let's copy, let me see. In the login page, we have this row with a button. Let me see. Not login page, let's say register page. I honestly don't want to type this. So I'm trying to look for all the shortcuts. Okay, no shortcut. Let's just type this anyway. It doesn't really matter. So let me see. I want a button. So I can say row. So the row here is going to have a class name of margin top, empty-3. Then you're going to have a column. So the column you're going to pass in a class name. So the class name there is going to be text center. Then you're going to pass in a button. Button is just going to say activate. Oh, activate. And then the type is going to be submit. Type is submit. Variant is just going to be outline success. Then the size of the button is going to be large. Then the class name is going to be margin top 3, and then large /btn. And then on click, we're going to pass in the submit handler. And that's basically it. That's the button I feared typing out. It wasn't even much work. Wow. Okay, so we're good. So we're going to, let me see, rename this component. Instead of activate, let's call it activate page. So in pages here, let's just change this to activate page. Then this becomes activate page. Then we export activate page like that. And that's basically it for the activate page. So back in the client app.jsx file, let's add 2 routes which would match up to the register and activation pages. We go to app.jsx here. Then let's import. So we're going to import, what was it? Register page. From pages, this is going to be register page. Then let's go back to the to the routes here. After login page, we can have a route. So the route for this path is going to be to /register. Let me see. And then the element is going to be the register page, the register component. Good. And then the next one is going to be for activation. So we're going to have a route. The path, remember the path from the backend. Whoa, the path at the backend was /activate, then /user ID. I'm going to take in the user ID as a parameter and token. So I know if you look at the backend route here, we didn't have that, to just user /activate, but we didn't take in those parameters. But the front end, we're going to pass in these parameters as part of the URL. So let's do that. So activate UID token, and then the element is going to be the activation page, the activate page. Let's bring it in and save that. Oh yes, the activation page has been brought in, and that's basically it. So front end, at the back end, we go to users activation. The front end, we pass in the UID and the token to /activate. So with all that done, we can now test the user registration and activation. So first, we're going to navigate to the register page and register a user. So go back to application. If it's on the home page, go to login, then new customer, register here. So let's register a username. Let's just call this John Doe. The first name is John, the last name is Doe. Then the email is going to be john.doe@gmail.com. The password can just be pass123456, doesn't matter. Confirm password, pass123456. Let's make this a wrong password, 7, and try signing up. You see, we get our toast message, passwords don't match. So let's correct this, 123456. Then let's sign up. Okay, request failed. Okay, let's go to the console and see. Localhost 8080, path not found. See, payload is correct. Preview, page not found. API v1 users. So I think I messed up. Not I think, I've actually messed up. Okay, so as you can see, this path doesn't exist. It's posting to API/v1/users. But let me check in the backend. Whenever we're registering a user, we're going to API/v1/auth. Oh wow, I made a mistake. So the mistake is in the slices. So if you go to auth slice, no, in the service, in the auth service, register URL. This is API/v1/auth/users. So with our URL corrected, let's now try registering the user again. So you can see the username here. Let's just have John Doe. First name is John, last name is Doe. Last name, email can be johndoe@gmail.com. Then the password can just be pass123456. Confirm password, pass123456. Then let's sign up. Good, nice. We're redirected to the homepage, and now we get our toast saying an activation email has been sent to your email address. Please check your email. So if you go back to Mailtrap, wait for it to load up. Good, we get a new email, activation on real estate. If you click it, you're receiving this email because you wish to activate on real estate. So now let's go to this page to activate. So localhost 8080. Now as you can see, it's taking our user, our UID and the token and putting it as parameters to this URL. So if you click on activate, good, we're redirected back to our application with the UID and the token in the URL. Good, and we're now told to activate our account. So if you click on activate, good, you're redirected back to the homepage and you're told your account has been activated. You can log in now. And if you want to test things further, you go back to Mailtrap. Let's refresh. You're supposed to get your account. You're supposed to get an email stating that your account has been successfully created and activated. So we're good. So go back to your application here. Then let's try logging in. Let's say this time with the John.Doe. First, let me open my Redux inspector. Just want to check something. If you go to Redux and check my state, nice. So this is john.doe@gmail.com. Then the password can just be pass123456. sign in. Good, we're redirected back to the home page. If you look at the actions here, so login fulfilled. If you look at the payload, we have our access and refresh token, meaning we're now logged in. As you can see, the navbar has changed now to profile and logout. Click on profile. The page is not found. We haven't created this page yet. And if you click on logout, and then the other thing, let's check in application. Local storage, you get our user. Let's try logging out. We log out, our user is removed from the local storage. So I know this video has been quite long, but we've covered a lot of ground. So with that done, the last thing left to do is make our commit. So go to your Git client. This is a feature, and say register and activate user. Then make the commit. So thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Cheers.